My bank card screamed at me before anyone else did. It happened in the checkout line on a Thursday, 2 weeks after my 70th birthday. The cashier slid my card once, twice, then looked up with that apologetic face shops teach their staff to wear the way hospitals teach nurses to hold hands. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Navarro, it's declined." Behind me, someone sighed theatrically. In front, the conveyor belt carried my groceries forward like a little parade of shame. Oats for my cholesterol, chamomile tea for my anxious nights, a chocolate bar I'd promised myself as a treat for doing my blood work. I felt heat creep up my neck. I had money. Not riches, but money. My late husband's pension, my modest savings from 37 years as a school treasurer, every receipt stacked neatly at home like a second spine. I tried the card again. Declined. My daughter-in-law, Clara, appeared at the end of the checkout, right on cue in her sleek sportswear, the kind that announces price before fabric. "Oh, Mama, you should have told me you were coming here," she said, voice pitched to Carrie. "I've reorganized your finances. It's safer if you use cash for now." I stared at her, willing the cashier not to move. "You did what?" "Seb and I put you on a spending plan," she said brightly, as if she'd brought me lilies. "It's called an allowance. We're your family. You don't need the stress of numbers." The woman behind me laughed in a short bark. 2 teenagers beside the candy rack started whispering. I reached for my tote, fingers clumsy, and found only a crumpled receipt, the kind from the pharmacy, with a brand name I didn't recognize and my birth date printed under patient. Clara leaned close enough for her perfume to sink into my sweater. "We'll pay this time," she said to the cashier. "Put hers with mine." And then, to me, a whisper flattened to steel. "Don't make a scene." I didn't. My hands, traitors to my anger, accepted a small envelope of cash she pressed into them. 200, she murmured, the way you'd soothe a toddler. "Make it last until the end of the month." Outside, a grocery cart rattled across the asphalt, and I felt my dignity rattle with it. I should have shouted. Instead I said, "Why didn't you ask me?" She smiled, a performance smile. "You've been forgetting things, Inés. Remember when you left the kettle on? We just want to help. If you're worried about me, you talk to me," I said, but my voice landed like paper. On the bus home, my bag felt like it was full of rocks. The pharmacy receipt, the envelope of cash, a glossy flyer I hadn't noticed until then. Reynoso Navarro Foundation, launching soon. Scholarships for underprivileged students. There was a photo of me from last Christmas, my hand on my grandson's shoulder, my name printed under patron. I hadn't consented to that, either. At my stop, the driver lowered the ramp for a woman with a walker, and a man in the front seat glanced at me. He was the same one who'd been in line behind us, a quiet man with a haircut that said civil service. He cleared his throat when I passed. "You taught math at Santa Lucia High, didn't you?" he asked. "My daughter had you." "Mr. Quiñones." I nodded warily. He hesitated, then slipped a card from his pocket. "I work at Sunfield Credit Union. If your card was shut off without your say-so, you might want to check who has authority on your accounts." He tapped the card. "Ask for me." And he said, softer, "They sometimes do this to older clients in the name of helping." I held his card like a thin, unexpected lifeline. For the first time since the cashier's apology, I took a full breath. That evening, I put my eggs in a bowl and cracked each one with unnecessary care. My hand trembled anyway. I thought of the years spent balancing school budgets down to the peso, the teachers who brought me receipts in paper clips, the satisfaction of a ledger that ended in 0. I was not careless. I was not bad with numbers. Clara should have known better. Or exactly that, that's what she was counting on. The phone buzzed. It was a notification from our family group chat. Reminder, Grandma should not shop alone. Use cash only. Safety first. The message had a little heart emoji at the end, like a bruise with glitter. I clicked on the sender. It was Clara. My son, Sebastian, hadn't commented. He rarely did when conflict hovered. It was a talent he'd learned from me. Then a second notification. Foundation dinner. Save the date. There was my face again, the patron. I stared at the screen until it went dark, then looked at Mr. Quiñones' card again. In the corner of the card, he'd written in pen, "Bring ID. Ask for transaction history." The handwriting was neat, precise. My father wrote like that. The kettle clicked off with a sharp sound that made me jump. I poured water over the chamomile and held the steam to my face like absolution. Tomorrow, I would go to the credit union. But tonight, I asked my reflection in the dark window, the way I used to ask numbers to show me their secrets. What are they hiding from me? At dawn, a message appeared that wasn't for me. It was clearly meant for someone else, a misfire in the busy little machine of our family chat. Make sure her phone updates, she keeps screenshots. And check if she's still got the notarized copy. We can't risk delays with the grant paperwork. My tea turned cold in my hand. I scrolled back to the grocery photo of the flyer. Grant paperwork. For something I hadn't agreed to at all. The twisting in my stomach steadied into a line. Tomorrow wouldn't be a request. It would be an audit. And I wouldn't be going alone. Because when I turned the pharmacy receipt over for the 10th time, a name I hadn't noticed before popped off the paper in tiny print. Prescribing physician, C. Navarro. I didn't have a doctor with that initial. Clara did. The cashier at the credit union didn't see the man in line slip me his card, but he did. And now, so did I. I placed Mr. Quiñones' business card next to the receipt. I had a strange feeling I wasn't the only one keeping quiet. And then the unexpected, a text from a number saved long ago as Anna Sunfield. I'd forgotten I had it. Years ago, she'd helped the PTA, Mrs. N, it read. I heard about card. Come today before 11. Bring anyone you trust. Don't tell your DL. My heart thudded once. I wasn't alone after all. By 9, I was sitting across from Anna's desk at Sunfield, holding the paper cup of coffee she pushed toward me like it was a passport. Anna had the same braid she wore when she used to bring cupcakes to bake sales, only now it was streaked with gray. She tapped the keyboard and angled the screen so I could see. Since you're primary on these accounts, you're entitled to full history, she said in a voice just above a whisper. But there's a new entry here you didn't sign. Power of Attorney Financial Limited. Executed last month. Co-holder, C. Navarro. Witnessed by... She squinted. Huh. By whom? I asked, taking off my glasses to see better. Signed by a D. Valdez. That caught my attention like a shout. David Valdez is my neighbor's son. He has been in Germany for 2 years with the Air Force. He couldn't have witnessed anything here last month, I said. He's abroad. Anna's eyes flicked to mine. Then that's forgery. The word vibrated in the space between us. She printed statements. We leaned over them together. It was all there if you read it like a story. Small transfers from my pension to a new account labeled Operating Fund, cash withdrawals at ATMs near Clara's Pilates studio, pharmacy charges for a drug I'd seen in the receipt, an antipsychotic, billed under my insurance ID. I don't take this, I said, tapping the pharmacy line. I never have. Anna's mouth tightened. Sometimes people try to build a narrative. Elderly relative is confused, cannot manage money, needs conservator. If it sticks, banks limit access until the court decides. Her finger rested on a line labeled Temporary Conservatorship, under review. If that goes through, Mrs. N, you won't be able to buy your own tea without someone's permission. My sinuses stung. Not crying. Fury tastes like salt when you swallow it. What do I do? We follow the rules of the world, she said calmly. They wrote them, we use them. You request a copy of the POA and the conservatorship petition. You ask for a detailed accounting of the foundation's funds if your name is attached. You talk to a lawyer. Most importantly, you do not confront them yet. If the story is Inés is irrational, let every move you make be boring and legal. She printed forms. Start an incident log. Write dates. Keep your receipts. And she added, almost conspiratorially, do something small but traceable, something only he or she would touch. If it shows up where it shouldn't, that's your proof. I left with a file folder under my arm and a paper knife in my pocket of courage. Outside, the morning glare was so bright I felt like squinting at my own life. At the pharmacy, I asked the technician to print my medication history. She did, cheerful until she saw the antipsychotic entry. Oh, looks like your daughter-in-law picked this up for you last week, she said, pointing to a little proxy pickup note on the screen. We have her listed as caregiver. I never authorized that, I said. The text smile faltered. There's a form, if you want to revoke. Her finger hovered over print. Do you? On the bus home, my phone vibrated endlessly. Family chat pinged with a photo of my grandson holding a soccer trophy and 10 comments, none from me because the group no longer allowed my messages. Admin has changed group permissions, it said. Then a private message from Sebastian. Clara says you embarrassed her at the store. Please be considerate. I typed, then deleted. He was my boy who had once cried because he'd stepped on a ladybug. It was unbearable to imagine him careless with my life. But if he benefited by not asking, that was its own kind of answer. At home, I opened the foundation flyer again. I Googled the name. It had a website already, stock photos of smiling students, a mission statement in Clara's marketing voice, and my name listed as founder and chair. There was even a press release. Local educator champions youth. I clicked donate. The form asked for credit card or check. I filled a check at my little kitchen table for $1 and wrote in the memo a code that meant nothing to anyone but me, P17/math club. I made a photocopy. Then I walked it to the mailbox down the street like a contraband letter in a spy story, only my life was the stakes. The next humiliation came faster than I expected because cruelty and efficiency often share a bed. The doorbell rang during my afternoon nap, a kind of sleep I used to joke I'd earn when I retired. On the porch, a woman in a navy blazer with a laminated badge, Adult Protective Services. We got a call about possible self-neglect, she said, peering past me. Burn marks on a kettle, confusion with finances. I invited her in. We sat at the table where my file folder lay like a silent co-counsel. I showed her the receipts, the forms, the proxy pickup printout. I watched her face change from suspicion to something like interest. You've been a treasurer? She asked. 37 years, I said. Keep documenting, she said. And she handed me her card with a softness that didn't patronize. If they try to move forward with conservatorship without notice, call me. We prefer families to solve things, but we hate fraud. By evening, the neighborhood had done what neighborhoods do best, judge with incomplete information. At the corner store, Mr. Salgado asked too gently if I needed help with numbers now. At church, someone behind me whispered, poor Inés. Her daughter-in-law is taking over. She's getting forgetful. Shame, she was always so particular with the bake sale money. I smiled at them all, the brittle smile of an object studied by a crowd. Then the letter came, certified mail, signature required. Sunfield Credit Union notifying me that a temporary restriction would be placed pending capacity review. There was a court date for a conservatorship hearing I knew nothing about, set a day after the foundation's gala. My grandson's soccer team was supposed to be honored on the stage with me. The invitation came by email, addressed to Founder Inés. I stared at the 2 dates lined up like dominoes. They were planning to present the foundation, bind my identity to it publicly, then take away the keys to my private life the next day. If a judge believed I was fragile, who would question the sudden authority Clara held? They had mistaken my fear of being a burden for permission to carry me like luggage. I held the certified letter over the trash and didn't drop it. My phone lit with a message from Anna. We found your $1 check. Not in the foundation. We'll explain. The kettle clicked again. I didn't forget to turn it off. There is a quiet hour when a decision approaches, like a train you recognize, mainly by the tremble in the rails. Mine came at 3:11 a.m. when the refrigerator motor stopped and the apartment went so still I could hear my heart. I got out of bed, made a list I didn't trust my memory to hold, and called 3 places as soon as dawn let me. First, the legal aid clinic at the university. A young attorney named Javier called me back before 9. He'd grown up in the neighborhood. He remembered my math club. His little sister had bought cookies from us once. Do not confront them yet, he said, echoing Anna. We'll file an objection to the conservatorship and request a temporary restraining order to prevent asset changes. We'll also demand full accounting of any entity using your name. Can you come in this afternoon? Bring the POA, if you have it. I don't, I said. They hide paperwork in plain sight, he said. Kitchen drawers. Coat pockets. Email attachments. Check any place they assume you won't look. Second, I called the pharmacy and revoked the caregiver authorization. The tech, same one, looked uncomfortable. She said you asked her to pick up. I know what she said, I replied. Please remove. She did. Third, I called Anna. Your $1 check, she said when we met in her office, was endorsed to Navarro Creative, LLC. Missing an R in Navarro. It's a shell. We traced it. Our compliance officer owes me a favor from the boutique to a marketing agency Clara registered 6 months ago. The foundation account receives donations. The agency receives consulting fees for brand management. Your name is the brand. How much? I asked, knowing already that the number would hurt less than the logic. Not millions, she said. But steady, enough to keep the story going. Enough to make it worthwhile. I felt a humiliation more intimate than the grocery line, to be monetized as an old woman with a feel-good backstory. She thinks I'm a mascot, I said. A human logo. Anna's eyes softened. That's why we bring receipts. Javier spread his forms over the clinic table like a map. We built a timeline. We attached the pharmacy log, the forged witness, the shell company registration. Anna's compliance friend sent a printout, the check photocopy with my code, the conservatorship notice appearing only after my card was cut. Javier was calm the way bridges must be calm. I want you to consider something risky, he said at last. It may open a legal trump card. You said they want you to move in for safety. If you agree temporarily, you'll gain access to the mail they've been routing, the files in the home office, possibly the communication between the foundation and the city regarding the grant. Also, if you are their dependent on taxes, they owe certain disclosures to you. If we can show that they claimed you while also arguing you're incompetent, that contradiction is useful. The idea made bile crawl up my throat. I hated the thought of sleeping under their roof, breathing their air of benevolence. But my job had always been unpretentious. You go where the numbers live. I'll do it for one night, I said. The night before the gala. Javier nodded slowly. Record everything you legally can, letters addressed to you, conversations in your presence. Do not take documents, photograph them. And keep your exit plan ready. I packed a small bag and told myself I was not moving in, I was moving toward clarity. When I arrived, Clara hugged me with cameras around. She always had an audience. So glad you came, she cooed. We were worried about you being alone. She handed me a glass of green juice. For brain health. I sipped because I understood theater can be a trap when you refuse your lines. After dinner, while she FaceTimed her mother to preen about the gala, I wandered, casual as a ghost in my own history. In a drawer labeled Utilities, I found a file labeled Foundation. Inside, invoices from Navarro Creative, retainer for brand presence, signed by Clara as CEO. There was also a draft of a speech with a line that made my scalp prickle. Our founder, whose resilience triumphs despite cognitive decline, inspires us. The phrase was a noose studded with sequins. In Sebastian's home office, a second file drawer held the conservatorship petition. The narrative was a story as cruel as it was tidy, apparent confusion with kettle, unsafe spending, vulnerability to scams. Attached was a letter from Dr. C. Navarro, no relation required, recommending oversight. The witness line on the POA had a signature for D. Valdez and a photocopy of an ID, except the ID was 5 years expired and had David's address from before the Air Force. They had counted on nobody knowing his timeline. I photographed everything with my phone, pausing only when I heard footsteps. I looked up to see my grandson, Mateo, in the doorway. Abuela, he whispered. Mom says you're forgetful. Are you? My mouth hurt with wanting to tell the truth without making him choose. I forget I'm allowed to be angry, I said. Everything else is fine. Later, as I washed the one fork left for me, how do households always end up with mismatched forks? Clara leaned against the counter, arms folded. You'll love the gala tomorrow, she said. It's all about honoring you. I kept my voice level. Then you'll honor me by removing, despite cognitive decline, from your speech. You read my draft? She asked, eyes flicking like knives. It was in a drawer labeled Utilities, I said. Hardly Fort Knox. She smiled, the kind that never reaches eyes. You shouldn't snoop. Your card wouldn't have been cut if you didn't buy unnecessary things, Inés. Old ladies are vulnerable. We're protecting you. I was a treasurer for 3 decades, I said. And you're buying the brand presence of my wrinkles. Her jaw tightened. Be careful with your words, Mama. You're staying under our roof. Only tonight, I said. I like my own kettle. When I went in my room, the guest room, they hadn't offered my old blankets. I found my small folder disturbed, a sheet out of order. The pharmacy log was missing. My stomach dropped. I had photographed it, yes, but the disappearance told me she had noticed more than she'd said. A text from Anna flashed. Be careful. She tried to access your online banking again. Our fraud alert stopped it. Also, concierge from your building came by to Sunfield, had envelope from your mail slot left open. Shredded piece shows City Grant Disp, bringing tomorrow. At midnight, in the dark, I heard voices through the vent. Clara and Seb. She's fine for now, Clara said. By next week, after the grant hits, we'll ask the court to expedite. Seb's response was a soft blur of appeasement. It's for her safety, he said. You heard what APS said. APS told me to document, I thought, pressing my palm flat against the wall, as if I could push through. It's a strange thing to recognize your son's voice and not recognize his choices. The gala was at City Hall, all banners and speeches and canapes I couldn't chew. The mayor's aide introduced the foundation as if it were a miracle. Founded by our beloved educator, Mrs. Inés Navarro, he declared, while a photo of me younger than I felt appeared on a screen. Tonight, we present a matching grant to support scholarships. Clara wore a dress that looked like smoke. Sebastian looked like a boy who had borrowed a man's suit. I sat at the table with my grandson, whose small knee bounced under his napkin, and with Anna, who arrived late with a folder under her coat and a look on her face I knew from exam week. Also at our table was a stranger, the city's grants compliance officer, it turned out, stern, observant, introduced as Ms. Patel. I wondered if Javier had had something to do with her placement. He had texted me an hour earlier. I filed the objection. If you have something decisive, tonight is the moment. The speeches began. A councilwoman praised family support. A local business owner cried at the microphone. Clara took the stage glowing as if she'd swallowed the lights. When I met Inés, she said, and I almost laughed, but kept my face still, I saw a woman who had given everything to others and now needed our care. I wanted to honor that generosity. Her voice dropped into a huskiness she saved for donors. She reached for my hand to pull me up to the stage. Please welcome the inspiration. I stood, but not to be led. Before the check, I said, and my voice carried in the way numbers carry if you add them slowly in a quiet room, I'd like to share my inspiration. It comes in columns. I walked to the podium and set my old treasurer's ledger on it like a relic. Numbers have weight. Paper remembers pressure. I've balanced budgets for marching bands and make-up kits, for copy paper and field trips. I can read a receipt like some people read palms. And what I've read tells a story that I am not the hero of. The room rustled uneasily. I'm not here to accuse, I said. I'm here to show. Anna rose and brought the folder, and beside her, surprising us both, Mr. Alvarez from my building appeared, hat in hand, eyes desperate but steady. I think this is yours, Senora, he said, voice soft through the microphone the aide thrust toward him. He held up a reconstructed envelope, taped meticulously together, addressed to Reynoso Navarro Foundation, grant disbursement. It was in the recycling, he murmured. Half shredded. Clara laughed a little, that brittle sound that wants to be a bell. We receive many letters, she said. Our team handles, I held up a photocopy of my $1 check. The screen behind us, controlled by someone I decided silently to thank later, magnified the image. I wrote this as a test, I said to the room. I wrote a code in the memo. It was endorsed to Navarro Creative, LLC, a company that shares an address with my daughter-in-law's marketing agency. The invoices, I nodded to the compliance officer, who took the papers from Anna with careful hands, show consulting fees paid from the foundation to that company for brand management, whose brand is my face. The room changed then, the way an equation changes when one side becomes obviously larger. Ms. Patel spoke, crisp, audible. This city's grants forbid conflicts of interest. A foundation contracting directly with its founder's immediate family without disclosure or competitive bidding is a violation. She turned to Clara. Did you disclose this relationship? Clara's mouth started forming syllables that did not assemble into words. I swallowed the taste of victory that burned like a cheap whiskey. There's more, I said, and my hands did not tremble when I lifted the forged POA. This document claims I gave power of attorney to someone who found a witness who has been in Germany for 2 years. Here is his deployment record. Our neighbor's son. It also includes a letter from a doctor who shares a last name and a dining table with my daughter-in-law. There have been pharmacy pickups of antipsychotics under my name, which Adult Protective Services and my attorney have on record. The purchases in my accounts include cash withdrawals at ATMs next to a boutique that cashed my check. If I am so forgetful, how did I make the decision to co-found a foundation while simultaneously requiring a conservator the next day? Which story is true? Both cannot be. Silence in a room can be as loud as a speech. I saw Sebastian's jaw shift like he wanted to say something and found nothing he could make credible. I thought of him as a boy, cheeks sticky with popsicle, and wished grief were less like drowning and more like weather you could dress for. A voice came then from the back. I can confirm the pharmacy pickups, the tech said, stepping forward, surprising herself and me. We switched the caregiver proxy off yesterday at Mrs. Navarro's request. The previous proxy was the same person receiving payments from the foundation. Clara's face changed like rooms at dusk. This is a smear, she said finally, composure shattering. We only wanted to help. She turned to the crowd. She leaves kettles on. She buys chocolate. The laughter that erupted then was not cruel but sane. Ms. Patel raised a hand, regaining order. The city suspends the grant pending investigation, she announced. And given the conservatorship hearing is tomorrow, I advise counsel to consider this evidence. She glanced at Javier, who had slipped in and now stood beside me like a second spine. A slow clap began somewhere. It wasn't meant to be dramatic, it was awkward, human, relieved. My neighbor from the credit union, Mr. Quinones, stood and nodded toward me. The mayor's aide whispered into a phone that I suspected connected to someone with state bar credentials. My grandson rose, eyes wide, and walked to me. He slipped his small hand into mine and held on. Clara's control shattered in stages, like safety glass. She looked at Sebastian with a plea stuck in the space between her brows. Say something, she hissed. He did, but not what she expected. We need to talk to a lawyer, he said. Not yours. Mine. He faced me then, throat working. Mama, he couldn't finish. The day after the gala, we went to court. The hall smelled like dust and coffee. The judge wore reading glasses at the end of his nose the way my favorite principal did when he read budgets. Javier presented our timeline. He handed over the reconstructed envelope, the check, the invoices, the pharmacy log, the forged witness proof. Adult Protective Services submitted a note that I had a plan and supports, that there was no evidence of self-neglect. The city's compliance officer filed an affidavit that the grant was suspended due to undeclared conflicts. Clara arrived in a beige suit that tried to be humble. Sebastian looked as if he hadn't slept. Their lawyer spoke about concern, family, the dignity of care. The judge listened, eyes moving like scales. Then he looked at me. Mrs. Navarro, tell me in your own words why you oppose the petition. Because the people asking to hold the keys to my life have used my name to open a door and place their hands in the box where the money lies, I said simply. Because if I were confused, I would be home, making soup, not here with a ledger and 27 receipts. The judge denied the conservatorship and voided the POA pending a full fraud investigation. He ordered a temporary freeze on the foundation's accounts, barred related party transactions, and referred the matter to the district attorney. He instructed the pharmacy to flag my name for any unauthorized proxy. He told Sebastian and Clara to stay away from my accounts, my mail, and my medical records. His gavel sounded like a door closing on a draft. Consequences arrived like a chain reaction. The boutique posted a sheepish notice about a mistaken check, The owner cooperated quickly, which saved her dignity. The city announced a review of several small foundations practices. Clara's marketing clients, sensitive to scandal, paused contracts. Sebastian moved into a friend's spare room. He texted once, asking to talk. I told him I would meet him in a public place, with Javier present, because love and boundaries can live in the same sentence if you let them. I did not press charges myself. The state was happy to pick up that baton. What I asked for was specific: restitution to the foundation so the scholarships could go forward under a new board unrelated to me, a public correction that I was not in decline, and an apology to my grandson, who had asked me the night of the gala in a voice still earning courage, "Abuela, were they lying to me too?" They were lying to themselves first, I told him, and it wasn't your job to make them stop. My revenge, if you want to call it that, was not a headline or a screaming match. It was an office in the community college where I now volunteer twice a week, teaching a free money basics class for caregivers and elders. It's a modest room with a whiteboard that squeaks, but when a woman my age raises her hand and asks if it's normal for her son to demand her PIN for convenience, and the rest of the room murmurs no, I feel something like power that doesn't shame anyone to claim. Mr. Alvarez taped a copy of the conservatorship denial to the building bulletin board with my permission, and someone wrote, "Go Inés," in pencil along the edge. I left it there. Clara took a plea on a deferred adjudication that demanded restitution, community service, and barred her from managing non-profit funds for 5 years. Sebastian signed a civil agreement to repay what he'd received through Navarro Creative. He cried in front of Javier and me, which is not an argument. I told him grief makes fools of us, but fools can read and change. He asked, eyes raw, if he could come to my class one day and sit in the back. "Sit in the front," I said. "Bring a notebook." At the first new scholarship ceremony, with the foundation in the hands of a board of students and teachers, I sat in the third row and clapped until my palms stung. Anna stood at the back with her braid and smiled without needing to be thanked. We both watched the stage and the careful joy of young people who had never heard my name until it appeared on a flyer under guest. It didn't appear as founder. Just Inés. That was enough. If you ask what I learned, I will not give you a proverb. The meaning is in the ledger of decisions. Accept the humiliation of pretending to need help for one night if it lets you find the file you need. Write a dollar check with a secret code if you want to know where the stream begins. Make your weakness the law's interest, not their excuse. Most importantly, choose your witnesses. People like Anna and Mr. Alvarez and Javier do not arrive with trumpets. They show up with a printout, a patch of envelope, a pen. You will know them by how they don't explain your life to you. Some nights, when the kettle clicks off and the apartment turns to velvet silence, I think about the night in City Hall when the room went quiet the way a breath holds before a laugh. My grandson's hand was small in mine, and his fingers squeezed once, twice, like we used to when crossing the street. I squeezed back, and in that small pulse of pressure I felt something I can't name without sounding like a greeting card, so I'll just tell you what I did. I put a chocolate bar in my tote for the bus driver who lowers the ramp, and I wrote on the whiteboard for my class the question that has become my welcome: who handles your money? Then I draw a little house, cross it out, and say, smiling because I promised myself no more metaphors, we're not talking about property today. We're talking about you.